Absolutely. Well, again, thank you so much for inviting me to participate. My name is Karen Bass. I'm a member of Congress. I am born and raised in Los Angeles and grew up during very turbulent times. And it made me very interested and committed to being an activist and fighting for social and economic justice. And for me, that meant so many different things. I grew up viewing my perspective as an internationalist. So looking at what was going on in other countries was very important to me, as well as what was happening in my community. I've been a member of Congress for a while, but decided that I needed to run for mayor because I am deeply concerned about what is happening in Los Angeles. And I feel that we're at a crossroads. And for the last 3 decades, I've worked along with a lot of other people to try to address the problems that now have reached epic proportion. So dealing with the issue of the unhoused, dealing with public safety, dealing with public health, these are issues that I've been involved in for a number of years. And while we were working on these issues 30 years ago, now it's exploded to be more than 40,000 people on our streets, unhoused, people dying every day, crime increasing. And my concern is that we could go in a direction where we start criminalizing poverty. We've done that before. We did that in the 90s when mass incarceration was just beginning. And at the same time as we had mass incarceration with sentencing laws and all of that, we also eviscerated the safety net. The combination of those two issues, I believe, led to the situation that we face on our streets today. That's why I decided to run for mayor. It was not an easy decision. It wasn't like I was fed up with Congress. I loved my work there, but home is home. Well, let me just tell you that anti-Asian hate crimes specifically and hate crimes in general have to be addressed in a very aggressive manner. An aggressive manner meaning that when a crime takes place, it needs to be dealt with and solved right away. But before a crime happens, I want to prevent the next crimes, which means that we need to have very serious public awareness, public education, and a sense of intolerance that is built in the community that says we will not accept this. You know, when this started, I was chairing the Congressional Black Caucus, and we immediately reached out to the Asian Pacific Islander Caucus, of which I'm an allied member, the Latino Caucus, the Native American Caucus, and all of our caucuses stood together and denounced this. And I'm happy to say that I was in Congress and able to participate in voting for a bill that denounced this and called for aggressive enforcement of anybody that commits a crime like this. It is a perfect example, though, of how leaders can create this, because the rise in anti-Asian violence completely coincided with President Trump's racism directed toward Asians by trying to escape his irresponsibility for handling COVID. And so he looked for a scapegoat and he blamed it on China and then thereby blaming it on Asians. So he fomented that, and that was unacceptable. I believe that city and county leaders have not viewed it as an emergency. I always use a health analogy because I used to work in the health field. And, you know, if you have a chronic disease like high blood pressure, you know you're not going to be cured of it. You know you're going to have to take medicine for the rest of your life. It's a chronic disease. And I feel like policymakers dealt with homelessness like it was a chronic disease. And now it's exploded, it metastasized, and it got completely out of control. In 1993, I was heading up Community Coalition. We were trying to take over motels in 1993 for people who were unhoused. And it took a pandemic for the city to come to grips with that was a strategy. So I think that we have to address this in a radical fashion, which means that I would declare a state of emergency in the city, but that's not enough. The state of emergency also needs to be federal because we need to have regulations relaxed on a federal level to deal with mental illness and substance abuse, which are key drivers for homelessness, but we also need to look at the population as not a monolith, but as different categories of people that are unhoused for different reasons. So let me talk again about when I chaired the Congressional Black Caucus, because it was in 2019 and 2020, right? As the pandemic kicked off. And the alliance that we built with the API Caucus, Latino and Native American caucuses, we came together and we knew that our communities were going to be disproportionately impacted. So we joined together and we were able to win billions of dollars to address the disproportionate impact. Two impacts, one is health and the other is economic. But unfortunately, a lot of the help that we were able to win did not trickle down like it should have. And so what I would do if I'm successful as mayor is really fight for those resources, because it's not like next year that this is going to be over. I mean, we thought this was going to be over 2 years ago, you know? We thought it was going to last for a few months. So the economic and the health impacts in our communities are going to continue to be there. And so I would really push for the resources that we won to make sure that they have impact. And so I want to have a very specific focus on minority businesses, because we know that the best way to deal with jobs, I mean, the majority of people work for small businesses. So it's in our interests, because one of the other problems that we have in LA, and homelessness is the worst manifestation, but it's profound income inequality. The difference between the rich and the poor is huge, and the middle class is kind of falling out. The only way to address income inequality is for people to have good and better paying jobs. Well, one of the basic foundations of my administration is going to be equity, period. And that is in everything, not just in jobs, but in distribution of resources, et cetera. And I've worked with the API community pretty much all my life, and I'm very clear of the diversity and the disproportionate impact, you know, the difference between folks who are from Southeast Asia versus Japan or China. So I think it's important to understand the communities. And it's one of the things that I love about LA. I mean, we're in the middle of the whole world. The whole world's here. If you want to go out to eat, you can pick whatever country you want to go to. And I think that that's one of the strengths of our city. So to me, it's a fundamental principle. That where they would visit? Well, you know what? I mean, I would go to the different ethnic communities, because people go to, you know, Universal City Walk, or they go to Grove, ironically. But I would suggest that people go to the ethnic communities so that they see our diversity. You know, and I would also not just look at it from the city perspective, but from the county, because, you know, there are so many different, you know, communities. Go to Chinatown, go to Koreatown. Go to Little Ethiopia, you know, go to Little Bangladesh, go to South Central, you know, and I think that's the richness of our city.